you hear it? Do you hear it? Those are the silent engines of Regenera. You can't hear them because they are wind powered. They don't make noise. Isn't that cool? But it's coming. Okay, perfect. So we're on. Engines are turned on, and the city has docked. I see a lot of few people here, so I'm not sure if all of you know about Regenera. We've been talking about it quite a bit. Regenera is the floating city that came from the sky to show us what's possible. I am one of the citizens of Regenera, and it is my pleasure to welcome you in our home in this annual celebration of our arrival to Earth. I wanted, before we start and move on, to offer you a generous offer. That was an idea that came out through our major, Baswa, and she's like, we should make all these people citizens of Regenera because, you know, it doesn't matter that they don't live in here, they share our values. And so we open up our custom offices, and I'm gonna post in there in the chat. Let me find it. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna post in there 2 links. One is regenera.city. That's how you get to explore the city and know about our history. The other thing is how to become a citizen. So you can become a citizen of Regenera, and you will be asked to choose which is your archetype. And in that process, you can also make a little card. I'm going to share with you my screen for a split second. We love these things, right? You can make your own citizen card with your archetype and become part of our family, and also join some of our councils to explore. These are the archetypes, and they call. You can be more than one archetype. At the same time, we don't have professions, we have archetypes. I identify with the trickster, the storyteller, the myth maker, the poet, and sometimes the futurist.
And the rebel.
And the rebel. Yeah, Rob always says that I'm the rebel. Oh, yeah. So yeah, so just click on that link and just become a citizen with us. It's fun, and it will lead to many, many things throughout the decade. So you want to be part of this thing. Anyway, what we're here to talk about today is our theme of the day. Does anybody know what the theme of the day is? Come on, I know you're smart. You've read it in the emails that we've sent. No, doesn't ring any bell. It's about this circularity and enchantment, re-enchantment. Okay, let's give it a try to re-enchantment, which is a word that I like. Will you give me your definition of re-enchantment? Does anybody want to unmute and tell what re-enchantment means to you? Hi, Piyush. Piyush, how do I pronounce your name? Can you give me a download?
Yeah, it's Piyush.
Piyush, perfect. Piyush, it's a beautiful name. I love how it feels in my mouth. It feels by mouth.
Thank you.
But before I get to you, I really want to hear your definition of re-enchantment. Does anybody want to unmute and tell me theirs?
Sure. Well, to me, how we see the world, the tinted glasses that we use to look at the world, can make the world look boring, fearful, or enchanted. So re-enchantment is taking off whatever glasses you're wearing and putting the other ones on that re-enchant the world.
These are my re-enchantment glasses.
Rock and roll.
I love that definition. Thank you, Atlantis. That's also a cool name, Atlantis. Pretty epic. Anybody else? Brittany, I see you smiling. Oh, hi, Alicia. Should I say mama?
Sure, I'll share. I loved Amanda's definition this morning about coming back into harmonious relationship with the world, with nature, becoming what'd she say, becoming apex gardeners instead of apex predators. I think re-enchantment to me invokes magic and awe and wonder, and seeing through the eyes of awe and wonder and magic, seeing the magic abounding.
Yeah. Always one of my favorite words and one of my favorite things.
Me too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I feel like enchantment is being in love with life, and so re-enchantment is falling back in love with life.
I like that. I remember I was a few years ago at the retreat, and we were like doing a circle, and we were like expressing what we wanted to do and what we wanted out of that place and that thing. And I was like, I want to fall in love with all of you. And everybody laughed. I was like, this is not because I'm polyamorous. I really want to fall in love with all of you. And to this day, they still remind me we're all very much in love still, many years. Yeah, I agree. Fall in love with life. I love that. With that, Piyush, I'm gonna ask you what re-enchantment means to you, and then I'm gonna introduce you to our lovely crowd.
Thank you, Tico. I absolutely loved everyone's interpretation and how they connect with this word. And for me, it also comes back to how do we come into the presence, the nowness. And through my work, the way I've started to actually understand that concept of coming back to nowness and coming back to presence is actually, as one of you said, is falling in love with life. As someone else also said, is actually to realize the magic that happens in the presence. And of course, through the conversation, we can probably uncover quite a bit of that. But it really is that, right? I mean, when I stop fighting wars with myself, when I stop fighting with people around me, with my environment, then I come into a natural harmony with the environment. And that's where the magic lies, and that's where the love lies. And that's what re-enchantment is.
Oh, I love that. You must know a lot about magic. You wear multiple hats. You're an entrepreneur, a researcher, an animist, an astrologer, a spiritual facilitator. Many of those things touch magic in their nature. I'm curious. First, I think I want to double click on the animism. Will you dare to explain what animism is to these people? In Regenera, we really believe in animism as one of our guiding forces. But please give us a little download and how do you dive into that?
Yeah, thank you, Tico. For me, animism is just really realizing and being in the certain aspects of life. And it's very fascinating, because a lot of these definitions are put it in the context of the place and the world and where we live and what is normalized. What is normalized in the current culture is our association with things that are very physical, right? Things that we can touch, feel, with the five senses, right? Animism is realizing that there's actually another reality as well that lies beyond that. And in many different cultures, they have many different ways of understanding that animism. But one of the aspects of animism that really allows to see is that we stop seeing world as these very empirical, distinct, separate entities. The object that is sitting in front of me is separate than me. The person that is sitting in front of me is separate than me. And we start realizing that there's these certain life forces that connects us both, that lies underlying all of this existence of reality. And in animism, we start to play with the qualities of this underlying certain forces. In many different cultures, we call them spirits, and other cultures have different names for it. Some cultures call it gods, and some culture have a very specific kind of qualities of spirits as well. But essentially, these are archetypes, which play in this field of animism. And essentially, it's animism is just the study and understanding of all of these spirits that interact with each other and the roles that they play, in our individual being and in the collective being and so on.
I love that. And I've been reading lately a lot about just reading about the different like philosophical currents that have shaped the world as we know it, and how in the East you might say that there was like a they went deeper into the concept of like what you just described, the idea that reality is a construct, that we're just perceiving what we see, and that there is much more there to grasp, and like just like putting practice into trying to understand through breathing, philosophical studies, or religion, what was beyond, what are those things. Whereas here in the West, I think we dive a little deeper into the practicalities of it, and that that probably gave rise to science, which we're very thankful for, but kind of limited a little bit our vision and scope of the world, right? That we kind of diminish all those things that we couldn't measure and touch, and so you hold a PhD in engineering and sciences, and I think in Regenerative we discovered that the truth to the world and to true happiness and understanding the world was trying to balance those two things, like the noetic, the things that we can touch but feel and we know are there somehow in different manifestations, and that would allow us to explain many things that otherwise with the current wireframes that we have we could not, and also understanding that the world is made out of like atoms and things and mathematics. What is that for you? How do you merge those two passions and visions of the world?
Thank you for asking. One of the key things is that if you look at the thought leaders of their own times, across times, even, either in sciences or in, more on the animism side, right? There's actually not that much distinction there. And that's the key thing, because it's not, the experience of life itself is not separated out into, that I'm experiencing something very tangible right now, or I'm experiencing something more subtle, I mean, the act of falling in love, for example, right? I mean, sometimes there's objects associated with that. And then there's also the feeling of falling in love, right? That's the subtle aspect. When we look at the leading scientists that happen to be, and that really created and shaped the body of science as we know it. I mean, be it Albert Einstein or Nikola Tesla or Newton, or even if you go back, all the way back to early Greeks, right, where you had Pythagoras and Aristotle, and and all of these people, they did not see world as distinct entities, and that was the key thing. And for them to realize that that these entities that we actually see, they actually have an underlying connection, and that's the connection that they spoke towards, right? And that's what my work is as well. For me, like the experience of how I step into like these different hats it's not segregated into different realities, right? It's all the same thing. I end up using different words and different vocabulary in the spaces where I find myself in, and I let myself actually be driven by things that are more, I guess, more eternal, if you would say it that way. So I come from India, and in India, it's a very different way of life than in the West here. People live more in their bodies than in their minds. Actually, a little bit too much in their bodies than in their minds. And what that also creates is a sense of a community there, and what that really means is that the identity of people is actually not individualized. The identity is very communal. So the way we live our lives there, it's not, the decisions are not made by saying that, what am I getting out of it? What am I wanting to do? It's made as if, what is the community wanting to do? And what is the community asking me to do? And people don't even have a tangible way of asking that question, right? That's how the bodies are actually experienced in India. And that's actually a lot of my work that I do, both in my role as an engineer, as a scientist, as well as the work that I do with animism and other things. It's how do cultures sit in our bodies, and just by that aspect, I'm actually inviting the culture that surrounds me as where I find myself. And I find myself in my microculture, where I live, the culture of the place, and we have terms for that, right? And I saw through the list that, that there were some talks around that as well. So there's terms like traditional ecological knowledge, indigenous ecological knowledge, and so on, right? And so when I talk about the indigenous ecological knowledge, I'm automatically saying that I'm identifying myself with the place where I'm at, and there's a culture around it, right? So I invite that culture in. I invite the culture that is a little bit more global, the culture that shapes the zeitgeist of this moment, and invite that in. And naturally, as I start doing that, the lines between animism and the lines between sciences start blurring, and I can actually step into more service of creating technologies and creating systems that serve a deeper purpose than creating something that is a product of just the mind.
I love that. Thank you for that response. I was reading in your bio a little line that caught my attention. It said something like, he practices deep listening to the wisdom of the earth and the stars. And I was reminded of a project that we launched last year from one of our revolutionaries, Umair Sia. He's from Pakistan, and he went to tribes in the mountains and ended up sitting in ceremony during their celebrations for 3 days next to a tree in meditation. And the tree gave him 50 lessons for humanity that he ended up illustrating, and we helped him publish them. The book is going to come out this year. I wonder what is, or what are, if there are a few, or one main lesson that you've heard from the stars.
That's a difficult one, like one lesson, right? Eventually when I think of re-enchantment, naturally, like what it comes back to for me is reciprocity. And that's something that I want to share a little bit more, right? I mean, we live in this world where, we obviously see the divide and we see the polarities in which we exist, right? And a lot of the polarities are also because we don't really realize the reciprocal life that exists beyond us. Like for instance, as we pick up the wealth gap in the United States, it's pretty extreme, right? And when we ask ourselves the question, how did that happen to be, right? And really, when we start looking into it, it's because a lot of the centralization of wealth happens because the people who actually are in the forefront of that, they don't recognize, or like at least the system does not help them recognize all the influences that they had over time. I'm in the place where I'm in, all the things that I'm able to do. It's not just me who's actually built myself into this, right? And it's true for everyone. We are influenced by, when we are born, we are influenced by our parents, and our parents are influenced by their parents, and so on. So we have a whole line of ancestors that have influenced us. We are influenced by the culture of the place that we were born into. We are influenced by the culture of the place that we moved into. We're influenced by the culture of the place in the way the knowledge is actually transmitted in that place, right? And that's where we come back to, again, there's the traditional ecosystem that we are part of. There's also an indigenous ecosystem, and we are redefining what that indigenous ecosystem means, right? And once we start realizing that the product of who I am is not just me, it's actually a whole culture and whole aspects of being both human and non-human, then we start realizing the reciprocity of life. And that's what really the stars have taught me. It reminds me of this, I think it's a poem by Hafiz, which says, look what happened on the earth, which created so much diversity, because the sun shone on the earth and never asked, what you can give me back, right? It's because we realize that, we live in this like very reciprocal way of life. So it's not about specifically defining interactions in terms of exchanges, but realizing our roles as we step into this larger ecosystem and giving gratitude to where we come from. In fact, that is also an inspiration that helped me launch this project, which I call Value Chains. And Value Chains is essentially, it was really fascinating to hear, people talk about NFTs and blockchains and things like that. And that's actually one of my sort of like soul work, if you would call it, where how do we bring this essence of reciprocity to very individual experiences and the technology that can help support that. So that's really, and I give that gratitude to the stars, my relationship with the stars. And when I call the stars, I'm talking about the moon, I'm talking about the sun, I'm talking about the things that have a rhythm, in the sky, in the heaven, that helps me realize that rhythm within myself and be with that. And so that's the gratitude that I'm speaking towards.
Oh, thank you so much. That was the perfect answer. I would ask you if you want to put in the chat, maybe if you have a link to your project. And I'm gonna close with one last question I need to ask, which is how do you find or encourage or create re-enchantment in your daily life?
Just building on that, really practicing reciprocity. Part of the world that I live in. So just to give a little background, through my entrepreneurship journey, I went into very capitalistic environments, and I realized, very deeply the kind of conversations that happen there, right? And as I moved through that, I realized, in the end, everyone is a human and everyone are people, right? And it's just people are acting in innocence and ignorance, right? And to realize that in my body, because, one of the essence of re-enchantment is to realize that I'm not different than someone else, right? And to come back into it and recognize that when I realize the reciprocity in my own body, I realize the reciprocity of the culture that I see in my body as well. And through that, I can actually do the work that I'm supposed to do. And so that's my day-to-day practice, is to realize this level of reciprocity that exists in my body as a reflection, as a mirror, taking the word from maybe the previous talk, as a mirror to what's happening in the culture, and using that to influence and empower my work.
Thank you so much, Piyush. It's been amazing to share this little space with you. I invite you, please, to become one of our honorary citizens and bring your wisdom to the city as often as you want and feel called. It's been really nice to hear.
Thank you, Tico. I appreciate your questions, and I appreciate the space that you have cultivated. It's a beautiful gathering, and good time to come back to it, to create this enchantment of distributed organizations coming together and sharing this space.
Amazing. And feel free to put in the chat any links where people can find you, or an email, or whatever you feel, however you feel and you want to be contacted.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
So much. All right. And now we have a very, very, very special person coming up next. Oken, I wonder if you wanna come here and do this with me, or if you want
love to. However, riffs will be perfect. I have a little something.
Because
I have a little something.
I really want to welcome them.
What did you have in mind, Nico? I'm suspicious.
Okay, let me see. Liv,
I'm just kidding.
Can we get you on camera so we can? Oh, there you are. Look at that! Look at that face. So lovely. Well, okay, I'll leave you do the formal introductions and tell about their work and stuff. But what I want to say about Liv is that it's been one of the greatest discoveries for me this year, and I really, really admire the way their brain works. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy that we were lucky enough to have you giving us a few downloads throughout the program as one of our revolutionaries. And it's been very lovely to be in your presence. You're a kindred spirit. And I really love the way in which you outpour your love for the world, and feel very thankful you're here today with us. So yeah, I'll leave Oken to do the proper introductions, but welcome.
I didn't mean to tap and just.
Go for it. Go for it.
I was actually going to share one thing from Priyash's bio that called to me as well. I believe it's a very good segue. We step into our potentiality with sovereign choices. We collectively build the new story of humanity in harmony with our bodies, our culture, and our terra nova. We recognize that happiness is a collective state. Liv is a multidisciplinary project manager and systems thinker who works within and outside of existing systems to nurture their capacity towards ecological, social, and individual healing. Currently, Liv is creating the project Emergence of Heart, featuring a short coming-of-age film of a white child learning about the intersection of the climate crisis and their own socialized white supremacy.
Thank you. I'm like still blushing. Wow. Hello, everyone. So I thought I was going to talk a little bit. I have a very chaotic brain at the moment. I just had a lovely panel discussion with my friend Abba about stories, and I thought I would share a little bit about from that conversation. And then the previous speaker, I just like came in at the tail end, but a lot of what you were sharing really resonated with me. And the short film that I'm working on kind of piggybacks on, or like parallels the journey that I felt like I had undertaken in order to try to understand reciprocity as like a healing path, and re-embedding myself back into the network of relationships. Because I feel like one of the wounds that I feel like I've inherited is disconnection. So I thought I would share a little bit about storytelling, touch a little bit about emergence as a concept, and then kind of give you the backside of Emergence of Heart, and then talk a little bit about how I think my experience in the design science cracked open a new type of Emergence of Heart project that is unraveling as we speak. So why stories have recently become really fascinating to me is because I'm seeing them as how we're making sense of the world. And so it's the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, the stories that we tell about the world that we're seeing and that we're living in. And it's these shared stories of how the world works and operates that then creates these patterns that continue generation after generation after generation. And so I see that there's a power in stories as systems thinkers would say, like paradigms. They're the, like in Donella Meadows, like leverage points of change. The paradigm is one of the hardest and also most powerful leverage point in order to change a system. And I see things like the Design Science Studio in this gathering here today is a group of people that are changing and highlighting a different story of the world that we're living in at this moment. Like for instance, last week, I was in intense like climate anxiety, freaking out about the state of the world. And the story I was telling myself was chaos and the ensuing chaos. And what is it going to be like for me when I'm in my 60s? Am I even going to be able to live that long? And so that is one story I could be telling about this moment in time. And I think that the Design Science Studio has like constantly been regulating my nervous system in part of elevating a different type of story of this moment and finding a sense of community in this moment. And so if we're seeing stories as paradigms and as these leverage points of change, they're collectively held. And then laws and rules and structures kind of root them in and allow for them to persist generation after generation after generation. And so when I was trying to figure out like how to change the world was kind of my initial goal ever since I was little. Because I learned about the climate crisis when I was like 5, and it is constantly this wound that I'm trying to figure out how to heal from, because it became such a core of my own identity of trying to heal the world, or save the world, which now I'm working on changing that internal story. And so where am I going with this strain of thought? So so that kind of internal story of healing the world and trying to change the world led me to getting interested in stories and paradigms, and seeing paradigms and stories as a leverage point for change. And one of the things that a professor said when I was sitting in on a class, because I was a biology student, so I sat in on like a African American studies class, and they were talking about, the professor was asking a question: how do you end racism? Is it at the collective level, or is it at the individual level? And is it the exchange of like changing the way that the adults around you are thinking, or is it at the educational level, at changing the way that children are learning and coming into seeing the world? And I thought that was a really interesting frame of that question. And she was posing it as like a chicken or egg dilemma. And what I began to see more of is it's more of like an emergence issue, or I shouldn't say issue, but it's like the crux of it is in this concept of emergence, which I fell in love with in studying biology, because it's about the way that smaller interacting parts work together, and in the behaviors of the individuals that creates the behavior at a higher level. And so that's where like complexity science kind of comes in and gets more complicated. But then it's this higher level that influences the lower level behavior. And so I was beginning to see that racism, capitalism, patriarchy, like the climate crisis even, the way that we're treating the other than human beings, xenophobia, like all of these forms of oppression are emergent crises. They're in the way that individuals are holding and behaving that is affecting this cultural emergent layer. And then that cultural emergent layer is affecting the individuals at the back. So it's going back and forth. And so that was in part the idea behind this concept and the title of Emergence of Heart. And then the other piece of Emergence of Heart was how do you change that dynamic of emergence? And one of the things that I found really interesting in systems thinking was the power of reflecting a system back to itself. Because when a system sees itself, it's able to change, just like when a therapist like tells you the story that you've been telling yourself, and it like suddenly things click and suddenly you see a different story. Like you see yourself and you're then able to shift and change and start to try to live a different story or live a different pattern. And so in working at an NGO, that was kind of what I did in designing this UN conference. Was I created a conference that allowed for, I was trying to bridge like public health with the climate crisis in global health. And so I needed to reflect the system back to itself so they could see a different story. So instead of looking at siloed diseases, they were able to begin to see like systemic origin stories of diseases. And so that kind of ingredient I've used in the way I'm thinking about Emergence of Heart. So that I'm gonna like booknote that. And then the other one was individual responsibility. And I find it really interesting when I've been talking to my peers, so like other 20-what-year-olds, is that they're feeling a sense of like powerlessness and agencylessness, and feeling like it's corporations that are going to be that have to change the climate crisis. And emergence gives me a sense of where the individual agency actually lies. So it shifts the way that I'm seeing the climate crisis, less through this like capitalistic fossil fuel emissions framework. And instead it's through this emergence framework of collective storytelling, collective changing of the paradigms, and the way that individuals are interacting with each other to birth a new collective emergence. And so that's where I see the power of us all. And that's kind of what constantly has been giving me hope recently. So I wanted to give a little bit of backstory of me in terms of kind of why I've come to this thinking, and why the heart exists, and emergence of heart. Because a lot of my story was about, and still is, to be very honest with you all, is about numbing out and escaping from feeling into my body, which kind of parallels what the previous talk was about. And so I escaped into my head in order to feel like secure and safe, because my body was scary to feel into. And then also, I think because I was non-binary, there was degrees in which my body didn't feel safe, and I didn't feel seen in the way that I saw myself. And so that created another degree of separation between me and the world around me, because people were perceiving me in a way that I didn't perceive myself. So I was like, oh, you don't know who I am. And then, so that was one piece. And then the other piece was learning about the climate crisis and feeling confused why the adults around me caused the climate crisis, or like why people were behaving in a way that was causing so much harm. And so that made me constantly be questioning humanity itself and the adults around me, and kind of have a distrust of people around me. And so I kept intellectualizing everything and trying to figure out the patterns. And that's why systems thinking was super impactful and important for me, because it gave me this framework of tracing these patterns and language to talk about tracing these patterns. But I was seeing it all as a problem that needed to be solved, and a knot that needed to be untied. And as soon as I figured out how to untie it, then everything would be fabulous. And like I would save the day and like check the like saving the world off my to-do list. And part of that was a journey of realizing that, like Einstein always says, like you can't solve a problem using the same method of thinking that created it. And so that was what I was seeing with this, is like my own journey of trying to learn more about feelings and come back into my body and return to my heart. And move kind of back and forth, I guess you would say, between the mental realm and the heart space. That was what I wanted to capture in a short film. And so I wanted to have a story, because I was seeing my own story as one of white dominant society in America. And I saw America as a country that was contributing a great deal to the climate crisis and was born on colonization. And so its roots are like so ensnared with and so much of a leverage point to this like greater change that I saw that needed to, and greater story shift that needed to happen. So this film, I wanted to trace a character as they moved from their head to their heart, as they moved from feeling superior, going to save the world, to recognizing their interdependence and reciprocity with the world. And I wanted to show a non-binary character as they're recognizing that part of being true to themselves is like coming out as non-binary, and you can be both passionate about the climate crisis and passionate about all these things and be non-binary, that those are not mutually exclusive. And so this short film, like in the act of making it, and that was the intention behind entering this design science studio, what has Emerged is a much different type of project. Like the film is still a short film, got the script made, like trying to figure out how to fund this thing. And the intention was to open up spaces for people to share their own stories back. And the idea of emergence of heart was both the emergence of heart of the character, as well as the emergence of heart of our collective storytelling spaces. I wanted to create a space where people could look at the roots of the climate crisis across America, and tell their own stories through that line. So I'm curious if anyone wants to write in the chat, like I'm curious, what is your story of like getting kind of woken up or realizing the problems that are existing in the world? And where do you see yourself in that kind of that journey? Like, where have you come? Where are you going? So that was that's where I wanted to kind of like end the talky portion. I did want to share in terms of like where Emergence of Heart has now kind of ventured off into, is in the act of trying to fundraise for this film. I made a global eco drag show with these two fabulous drag kings in Taiwan. And that I like wove this other story of looking at the past in each country, opening up a space for people to share their art and to share what it feels like in the present. And then imagine a queer future for all life. So I'm gonna just like quickly share. Oh, that's not how you share things. Getting rusty in this whole Zoom world. There we are. So I'm going to quickly share the, there we go. So this is Emergence of Heart. So this is kind of the backdrop that I've used for the film itself. It all started with me learning about the climate crisis through receiving a stuffed sloth. So that's hence the sloth imagery there. And so the film is structured through a series of questions that the character is asking, but then also is kind of asking the audience as well. And the first one was, are people good or bad? Which I think is demonstrating both this binary thinking as well as this kind of like harsh, childlike perspective of a world that they're seeing, and the confusion that they feel. And then it moves into these more complicated questions of like healing toxic patterns within you, but then also having this kind of more childlike view of the world with, like, if you can see in the upper left corner, I photoshopped that, but the idea is like just this kind of like simplified view of how to change the world. Like, oh, we'll just like pluck out the pipes and we'll just like scoop out all the plastic. And these like simplified views that as I grew older, I realized was all intertwined in politics and economics, and it got more complicated. And then as the character moves forward, it comes through a place of how can they be a responsible human being today. And the film uses like metaphorical imagery of a drowning person, and wondering, the character dives in to rescue the person drowning and save the person. And in diving in to save this one person, suddenly they're surrounded by drowning bodies. And so they have to go under the water to see why everyone's drowning. And in pulling up, seeing these cords that are holding everyone down, and then trying to pull up the cords, they start kind of unearthing, all these ancestral patterns and ancestral beings. So that's kind of the nature of the film. And then, so this is a little snippet of the drag show. And so we're planning on hosting more drag shows, same kind of collaboration, and hopefully spotlight performers from different countries. And it was just like way more of a fabulous, successful show than any of us anticipated. And so we're really excited to collaborate again. And then just recently, I collaborated with Veronica, who's another DSS cohort member, in holding a space for Earth grief. And we're planning on holding more planning on holding more workshops. And so here's the email address to sign up for those. And we're going to kind of just be like iterating and prototyping it. And then here's my fabulous team that is working on the film with me. So yeah, I wanted to kind of just end, I guess. I don't know how I'm doing with time. I don't know if that prompted any questions within people. Kind of just me shooting my own shit out into the world there. But yeah, I guess where I was going with that is the DSS has moved me, I think, from a place of trying to just simply make a short film and open up emergence of heart and kind of ask the question, what else can emergence of heart be? And because the drag show was so fabulous, and I started to see emergence of heart more as like a production house, which then kind of shifted the way I was seeing myself, because I never saw myself as a filmmaker. I saw myself more as that like project manager, designer being. And that emergence of heart is really about reflecting that collective heart back as like a powerful tool, as well as bringing and creating more spaces to amplify like individuals' hearts and weaving that into a collective space. And like really, I don't know, highlighting the power and the agency of the collective and reflecting that collective back, reflecting the hearts back as like a healing medium. And so what I'm planning on with this film now is kind of like scrapping the professional film route and looking to partner with a whole bunch of local schools, because like a whole bunch of colleges hosted and supported the drag show, and the drag show was a collaborative act of all these different performers coming together, and that's what I did with the conference. I'm like, maybe that's how I roll, and so I'm planning on kind of creating a space for this film to really be made by the people like my age when I was younger, my younger self, basically, or the younger generation. And to bring their kind of perspective into the act of making and telling this story, because climate anxiety, especially in younger generations, is like off the charts. And then the other thing I'm working on along those kind of pattern lines of highlighting the individual and the collective is reaching out to different schools and elementary schools and asking children to draw their feelings about what it feels like to be alive right now. So putting their like climate anxiety feelings onto paper and then making like an animated, almost like reel of a whole bunch of emotion drawings from people, and kind of again birthing this collective, because I think this feeling that we're all alone in the world is just, and we're alone in these feelings, which is a pattern that constantly happens to me. And so emergence of heart really is coming from my wounds and coming from these patterns that I'm trying to obviously like heal from. And so I'm really grateful for all the collaboration. And yeah, I would love to collaborate with more people. And yeah, if there's any way that you want to collaborate with me, just let me know, or at the grief workshop, or hear about the drag show or the film or any of these things. Please let me know. So with that, I'll open it up for questions, or I'll pass it over to the MC. I don't know how I'm doing with time.
Yeah, I think that we could we're a little behind schedule, but maybe one question. And I also just want to, Alicia graciously is hosting, and I'm like sitting on the couch. So here I am. But I did just want to pop in and just acknowledge you, Liv, for all that you've brought and all of the different ways that you've been collaborating, and how much care and thought and dedication you've brought to this program. And also just for being so motivated to create so much content and kind of valuable ways to weave all the things and all of your skills and perspectives into a community you really believe in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Believe in
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, your work is so important, and honored to be your friend and collaborator now, and so excited to see it weave into the world and touch so many lives.
You guys are just making me blush in the chat. Oh Lordy.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
It's comfortable to feel this much love.
You are so loved.
Yeah, you're doing important work, you know, it's really important work.
Yeah, Atlantis, come up here. What do you think?
Oh, well, I love the eco drag thing, but the community, the film, you know, your ideas about emergence, you know, and realizing, yeah, you can try to change things from the top level, you know, and get involved in politics and stuff like that. But when there's an inner transformation with enough people, that emerges and it shifts. So emergence of the heart, I love that. Thank you. Very inspiring.
Thank you. I don't want to diss on people working in politics. That like everyone has a role. We're
It's all important.
We're
for
building,
sure.
liking, mobs.
God bless our politicians.
Exactly.
we need to push them in the right direction, right?
Exactly.
I'm ready to send them the other direction. I'm just kidding. Loving kindness connects Liv with our next presenter. And compassionate communication is a part of that. Trauma informed, all of that. Thich Nhat Hanh recently passed away. He left us with many great lessons. Here's an abridged one. The first element of true love is loving kindness. The essence of loving kindness is being able to offer happiness. You can be the sunshine for another person. You can't offer happiness until you have it for yourself. So build a home inside by accepting yourself and learning to love and heal yourself. Brittany is a creative producer, facilitator, and community weaver. She is fascinated with social architecture and communication and believes that learning and practicing the art of compassionate communication with one another is foundational to the Renaissance. Brittany believes that we innately possess the capacity to have fulfilling, healthy relationships and sees trust and love-based connection as the necessary backbone to the spontaneous collaboration it will take to create a world that works for 100% of life. Brittany guides people in finding clarity and connection within themselves and in their relationships through compassionate communication in service to collective liberation.
Thank you, Oken. It's great to be here with all of you. Thank you, Liv, for sharing your heart and for all of your amazing work. I'm so honored to be a part of this program with you and to be on this path with you, with all of you. So I have a presentation, and then if anybody wants to go into a breakout room and do some discuss further, we can do that. And so I'm going to share. I can share my screen. Roxy, is that right?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Let's see. Right. Okay, so this talk is called, I titled this talk Regenerative Relating, Compassionate Communication for Planetary Regeneration. And so first, I want to just define regeneration, define relationship, and how these come together. I've loved these first two definitions of regeneration. The first was introduced by Nico at the very beginning of the DSS in one of our first sessions. Simple definition of regeneration as giving more than we take. Veronica, beloved fellow cohort member, Veronica Anderson, also has a great definition of regeneration. A regenerative world is a world that loves itself. And these other words are synonymous or related to regeneration: renewal, restoration, revival, reconnection, repair, resilience. Many of those are used in the context of thinking about regeneration in terms of ecology and biology. And regeneration also points to the life-death life cycle, and this idea of coming back to life, coming back to health. So taking those principles of regeneration into the realm of human relationships, our relationships become about growing and giving, and we are committed to practicing healthy ways of relating to one another. So I love that you brought up Thich Nhat Hanh. He's been a teacher of mine for many years, as I know he has been for many others in the studio. And I just wanted to kind of frame this sharing with beginning with our interbeing. And interbeing is a term that was brought to us by Thich Nhat Hanh. And it means the interexistence of all things. And so we start so much of the summit, so much of our work is about this paradigm shift into seeing all as interconnected, all as one. And it's the cultivation of this universal perspective that gives us the motivation to practice compassionate communication with one another. It's when we realize that we're a part of and not separate from the world in which we live, that we naturally develop respect and empathy for other living beings, human and non-human, as reflections or aspects of ourselves. And when we begin to see Earth and humanity as a unified whole, we become aware of possibilities for healing and transformation that are different than what is usually accepted in dominant culture. And I'm using healing here. I've recently kind of come back into a relationship with the word healing. I used to wasn't really feeling it for a while because I felt like it invoked this, like something to fix or something is broken. But the etymology of healing is actually wholeness, and it's about this reintegration back into the wholeness, back into wholeness. So, oops. All right, so connecting compassionate communication to planetary regeneration. Planetary regeneration, creating a world that works for 100% of all life, requires spontaneous collaboration dependent on how successfully we can communicate with one another. So back to the previous slide, the paradox is, yes, we are all one, but we're also not. We're in these discrete bodies, and we need to, which is why we need communication and good tools for communication. We need tools for communication because feelings are in the fields. Feelings are an inextricable part of our human experience. So finding ways of expressing our feelings and moving through tension, conflict, as it arises in collaboration is vital. And so I believe that cultivating genuine and joyful human connection is what will pave the way to Earth regeneration. And all of us really share in that deep knowing and belief. And that compassion is the precursor to developing compassion is the precursor to joy. And so designing a system that works for all of life asks us to do the work to belong ourselves to the world, to engage, reach out, recognizing our common humanity. And in recognizing our common humanity, we get to be human together and lead with love and compassion and communication within our relationships, our families, our communities, and workplaces and our regenerative organizations. So I wanted to define, I had a lot of fun thinking about the definitions of these different terms and how they all come together. So communication, the dictionary definition of communication is it's a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. And we've been establishing the shared language within the DSS for the last 8 months. And so that we can communicate and then collaborate. So compassion, the literal definition of compassion is to suffer with. So there's also an active component to compassion. It's about responding to suffering, a desire to alleviate suffering. And compassionate communication is, again, recognizes our common humanity and that all humans suffer. That the very definition of being human means that one is mortal, vulnerable, and imperfect. Sympathy and empathy are very similar and kind of contained within compassion, but we can distinguish them. Empathy, I'm going to talk about nonviolent communication in a moment, but in Marshall Rosenberg, who developed nonviolent communication, defines empathy as the respectful understanding of what others are experiencing. I think of it as the ability to imagine the experience of another, to have insight into another's experience. And I've learned about these two different kinds of empathy, cognitive versus affective, and learning these terms has been very useful for me navigating my life and relationships. And cognitive empathy is a type of empathy where you're taking on another person's perspective on a mental level. You can cognitively understand someone else's position or line of thinking. You can put yourself in their shoes. Whereas affective empathy is a type of empathy in which a person directly shares an emotional or an affective state or experience with someone else. And neuroscience has discovered that we have these mirror neurons. And so when someone is experiencing affective empathy, their mirror neurons are firing when they hear someone else's emotional experience or hears their story. And so, yeah. And then I wanted to define love and trust because the outline of when I sent in my description for the workshop, I wanted to examine how trust and love-based connection acts as the necessary foundation for regeneration. And if any of you have beautiful definitions of love and trust, I'd love to hear them if you want to put them in the chat. But I appreciate both of these definitions of love, and love as a deep sense of being at one with the world, and the fundamental unifying and creative force in the universe, which is a definition from a book called The Trust Frequency that friends of mine wrote. And trust, I had a lot of fun thinking about trust. Trust, the literal definition is to have faith or confidence in, belief in the reliability, ability, or strength of someone. And I like the idea of leading with trust. And my sense is that there is this collective story about trust, that it's something that needs to be gained in order to be given. And I want to invite us to think about how we can lead with trust and give trust first, realizing that trust does evolve incrementally over time, but that the way to start or rebuild trust is to give it, and then we can proceed from there. We can shift and we can use our discernment. And that honesty builds trust, but that the precursor to being able to be honest is developing a sense of self-trust, which allows us to be honest with one another and to reveal ourselves to one another. The other piece about trust that I think is interesting is that a culture as trust is generated through a culture of feedback, and that feedback is a gift, and healthy regenerative living systems are feedback systems. So I'm trying to practice this and remember that giving feedback is a gift, and being receptive and open to feedback. So now I want to talk about nonviolent communication, which I've been studying for the last couple of years, and it's really, really enriched my life. And it is a process that was developed by Marshall Rosenberg in the early 1960s. And Rosenberg was a psychologist, a mediator, an author, and a teacher. He died in 2015. And the shorthand is NVC, of nonviolent communication. And it's a way of communicating that leads us to give from the heart, also referred to as a process or a language of compassion. And it's a process where instead of habitual automatic reactions, our words become conscious responses based firmly on awareness of what we are perceiving, feeling, and wanting. And in this way, NVC fosters deep listening, respect, and empathy, and engenders a mutual desire to give from the heart. So I'll briefly go over the 4 components of nonviolent communication. The first is observations, which can be defined as the concrete actions we observe that affect our well-being. And so instead of communicating from a place of observation, we oftentimes make evaluations of one another, which can more easily lead us to misunderstanding and conflict. But NVC trains us to observe carefully and to be able to specify behaviors and conditions that are affecting us. There's a great quote in the book from J. Krishnamurti, and it's that the quote is, the ability to observe without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence. And as I continue to contemplate this, I'm find deeper and deeper truth with this, to be aspiring to be with life as it is. The second component of nonviolent communication are our feelings, which can be defined as how we feel in relationship to what we observe. And then in NVC, we distinguish between feeling and non-feeling words. We distinguishing between our feelings and our thoughts, between how we feel and how we think others will react or behave towards us. And then our feelings, the third component are our needs. And I put a little equal sign here because to indicate how our needs are connected to our feelings, that really our needs are at the root of our feelings. And we can take responsibility for our feelings through understanding our needs and stating them to one another. And oftentimes our language is really obscuring the awareness of how we can take personal responsibility for our feelings. And when we say things like have to, or makes me feel, or should, that's facilitating this kind of denial of personal responsibility of our own feelings and our own thoughts. I also have learned a lot through this framing around feelings and needs, distinguishing between stimulus and cause. So feelings are the result of how we choose to receive what others say and do. So they're not being caused by what others are saying or doing, but it's how we choose to receive. And in that way, there might be a stimulus, but there's not a cause. And the fourth component are our requests. And requests are the concrete actions we request in order to enrich our lives. And often we're not conscious of what we're requesting when we speak, and we talk to others or at them without knowing how to engage in a dialogue with them. But there's beautiful creativity and vulnerability in making requests of one another. Many ways we can co-create win-win scenarios that are enriching for all involved. And when we have this shared objective, when there's this shared paradigm and shared objective that we want relationships based on honesty and empathy, we can achieve those. We can think in this win-win paradigm and mutually enrich one another's lives. I also appreciate this reminder around requests to use positive action language to state what we do want rather than what we don't want. So that's a little overview of NVC. The next piece I wanted to go over is learning to listen. And I love this definition of listening is an active role and a true exchange of energy through each of our interactions. And in NVC, we talk about listening in the context of receiving empathically and paraphrasing, which I won't go too into now, I'll keep going. But learning to listen. So learning to listen, not just to one another, but to ourselves, to our bodies, to the earth. And I love this quote from Andrea Cohen: communication requires slowing down to the speed of wisdom, which is learning to listen. There's a pace to it, to receive the wisdom and be able to communicate at these deeper levels and collaborate at these deeper levels. I also love this little tool. This WAIT acronym stands for why am I talking, which is not always helpful, but sometimes asking ourselves this question can be helpful to make sure that we're really listening. There's also these 4 types of listening from Otto Scharmer from the Presencing Institute, and these kind of build on one another. The first is downloading, which comes from a place of habit, habitual, the way we listen habitually. And we're looking for information in this type of listening to confirm our own beliefs. We're projecting our opinions, our judgments onto other people talking or onto the subject of the conversation. And the second kind of level is factual listening, which comes from the outside, which we're listening coming from the outside as an observer. We are listening for what we don't know, for new information, but we're not paying attention to the deeper nuance, to feelings or emotions. And this third kind is the empathic listening, which is listening that comes from within. And by creating an emotional connection, consciously feeling the other, and through an open heart, allowing ourselves to see through their eyes. The fourth kind, which we're all aspiring towards and practicing, is this generative listening, where we see and feel the one speaking in their full potential, which can increase the capacities and creativity of the person speaking. We're connecting with the core ideas of the conversation and their potential futures. And I also love this idea of becoming believing mirrors for one another, mirroring back to one another, our creativity, our capability, our expansiveness, which is what which we've all been practicing throughout this virtual summit and throughout DSS. Has felt like such a nurturing community of fellow believing mirrors. So I wanted to introduce this circle of influence and concern as a way of, this comes from a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And it's in the context of thinking about compassionate communication and burnout. How do we manage compassion fatigue when we're systems thinkers and we're working at this level, thinking about these existential issues? And this is a way of acting from our circle of influence and trusting that there's this ripple out. And our circle of influence might be like what I read, what I say, my actions, my attitude, time management, diet, exercise, rest, spiritual focus. Whereas the circle of concern is, might include the actions of others, world events, the weather, politics, natural disasters, what I can't control as much. But when we are proactive, we have a proactive focus and we lead with a positive energy, and start from within the circle of influence. The circle of influence, the proactive positive focus expands our circle of influence. And and can kind of mitigate the compassion fatigue, finding this balance. And I worked for years on and off in the environmental nonprofit sector, and definitely gone through cycles of burnout, and experienced the burnout working on systemic existential issues and not knowing how to cultivate balance in my life and care for myself. But learning the tools of self-compassion have been crucial. And then tools like nonviolent communication and these kind of concepts have really helped me. And let's see. So bringing in the body, developing somatic awareness, relationship with the body to understand our own feelings and needs, values, desires. Somatic comes from the Greek word somatikos, meaning body, and also implies that the body is distinct from the mind, which is interesting. The body is constantly sending us signals, communicating with us. And there's the importance of listening to our bodies as environmentalists, staying in connection to our bodies as a part of nature, attuning ourselves to the environment through the body. Let's see. So where do we go from here? These were just some different themes that I introduced. The invitation to experiment, to take risks, to ask dangerous questions in relationship, to be vulnerable, to give honest feedback to one another, to share our feelings, to slow down, to make requests of one another for the win-win, to mutually enrich one another's lives, to ask for help, to express our needs fully, be willing to be uncomfortable, to stay proactive, and to listen. And that's the end here. Thank you so much for listening. That was a big download of a lot of information. Really appreciate your presence, and happy to stick around if anyone wants to talk about any of this, and go to a breakout room. I'll stop the share here.
That was amazing, Brittany.
In a room with you.
Super important work.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you all.
Bravo.
Our next bridge
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Brittany.
Thank you.
Atlantis, he writes, I think this is, thank you for teaching how to be more empathic, empathetic. Are there programs for teaching empathy in schools? Any other ways to encourage empathy at scale? Seems to be a shortage of empathy these days.
Yeah, I think getting different practices into schools is so important. And there are some great hacks, like we are all, I think we're all empaths. I kind of made my character in Regenera the empath, and I felt a little silly doing that, like calling myself, but I really think we're all empaths, and it's just creating the spaces and finding the tools and the exercises that help us to kind of like build those capacities with one another. And it can be as simple as just sitting and doing kind of some like authentic relating exercises. I've done this kind of human connection exercise that's really just a mirroring of, repeating back and forth what we're saying to one another and allowing it to emerge organically.
That's interesting because that's actually an acting exercise.
It's this based on the Meisner technique. It
is. It's Stanford Meisner. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you threw that name out. That is so wild. That's a really like niche thing. Most people wouldn't ever say that name, but wow. Okay, so that's interesting that I caught on, and that really does you're kind of surprised by when you go through the act of this kind of repetition together, the range of emotions that not only do you experience in that, but that you also feel the person that you're with going through, so it also kind of comes back into this embodiment, these embodiment or re-embodiment principles too. So juicy stuff right there. And I love the idea of like putting our minds together and having a little, putting together a little program that could be shared with schools that people could implement in classrooms. Like how do we get schools to implement this stuff? So super valuable, incredibly important, and thank you. I didn't mean to interject a whole bunch, but thank you, Brittany. Sorry, Oaken, please. Please.
You're doing great. Absolutely. Choo choo. Oh man, my choo choo's off. Excuse me.
Nice we love all choo choos here.
Our next presenter, I'm just happy I get to say her name. Pamela Giroli is here as an artist and fabricator focused on using the components of reality to make something new. She solves leftover scraps into furniture and unplanned moments into photos and videos. Now she is transforming today's visions into tomorrow's regenerative economy through nonfiction, a game for collaborative story building.
Okay. So this is the story of the 5 Mother Earth archetype discussing the future of humanity.
Okay, Pamela and I are playing this game already. I am going to try to guess what she's saying and communicate it to you all. I think she froze. Did she freeze for everybody else?
How's it going?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So this is the story of the 5 Mother archetype.
Pamela, we're not hearing you.
What do you mean? Oh, no.
Yeah, I
No,
hear you.
we are hearing you. I hear Pamela.
Yeah, I do too.
All right.
Maybe,
I hear you. Sounds good. Then I'll just get on. Are we on here? I can't take it anymore. My forests are burning. My rivers are drying up. And they've dug pits so deep that I'll never heal. I'm too sick and too tired to stay alive. Fuck them. They had their chances and they always choose distractions. It's time to get rid of them. Absolutely no. They're still very young species. They're like toddlers, still learning how to walk and bumping up against boundaries. We shouldn't protect them or exterminate them. Whatever happens, happens. If they're meant to suffer, we will suffer. If we're meant to thrive, we will thrive. Karma will take care of everything. No, don't you see? This species has potential. In less than 100 years, they managed to move carbon that took us billions of years to sequester. They have real skills. We just need to redirect them. We need to get in business with them. This is my kind of business meeting. But before we get to business, I have to thank you for sending me to Design Science Studio. It was the most incredible experience. The knowledge this group compiled, and it's all about tuning in with you. You have quite a following. They know you are alive. During class, we spend time just listening to your breathing. There is a great excitement. Everyone can feel you, and we are ready to evolve with you. You know, you always talk about expanding the forest. At Regenerative Summit, this guy showed his pilot for saving the last Kenyan rainforest, establishing nurseries, sites in schools, so they can help fund education, provide technology, plant trees. And there is so many projects on data analytics, mapping problems that need solving, nesting information. There are cryptocurrency incentivizing all kinds of regenerative practices, and they are really taking off. Look, I made a currency for you. I am so inspired. I made a little trailer of what I think you want to say. I am Mother Earth, and I'm reclaiming management of the planet and establishing a transitional system that will incentivize regenerative action to restore balance and harmony. In our new world, everyone will have housing, healthcare, and universal income. Beyond that, all compensation is solely based on regeneration of resources. You will have access to information to understand your choices, and you will be able to proactively invest in what matters to you, from your health, personal development, local food systems, to the needs of the planet. Through these investments, we will build new infrastructure, and all systems will be rebuilt and improved using efficient ecological technology. All will be cooperatively owned. We will invest in systems to sequester CO2 by improving soil and ocean health, innovating new methods of food production, expanding the forest, and building biodiversity. And I will hire artists to document it all and inspire continued evolution. We will teach anyone who would like to learn new skills, and anyone whose businesses require radical transformations will be supported to find a new role. No one will be excluded. We are building towards a world where we enjoy a higher quality of life. Our systems will be so healthy and efficient. This will leave us with plenty of time to dedicate to our families, our health, our learning, developing our craftsmanship, and other pursuits that bring us joy. When we thrive as individuals, our families and our community and the planet thrives too. I'm inviting everyone to become a citizen of this new Earth system, a citizen of a borderless Earth where we all are connected and working on our wellness and evolution. Okay, so these are little pieces of stories that originated with the vision of Mother Earth reclaiming management of the planet. So, but equally important are the non-fiction stories, the ones documenting all of the work that is happening to move us forward. So the movie I shared is the utopia that I see in our future. But the stories we heard all week are the projects that are gonna take us there. So I'm creating a game called Nonfiction as a way to connect today's stories to the future. And the goal of the game is to co-build a utopic message to connect our story together through branches and nets, and to co-build the evolution of the game itself. So I'm going to hold game sessions at the Futurist Cafe. And so if you want to connect with me, let's see. You can register here, or you can just hit me up via email. Basically, through this, you will receive access to the content, an agenda, and instructions for the next step. The first game session will be on May 6th, and from that day forward, there will be a game every 111 hours until the 2 weeks challenge in July. Each meeting will start with a viewing of the story that got built the previous time. And at each increment of 555 hours, we will have public events, probably on the Vision Train. And those will be the May 28th and the summer solstice. So you can contact me for anything, also via WhatsApp. Okay, I am complete.
Oh, wonderful. I've been waiting to hear that story.
Hello.
You know, to find voice in your voice, to hold that and carry that through for Gaia, that's quite a weight on your shoulders. How does that feel?
I want to have somebody else doing the voiceover so much. I asked a couple of people, but it's still me. But it's open because it's many voices.
It is many voices, and that's what we've been hearing all throughout these sessions. And it's the story of us, isn't it? That we are carrying that voice through all of us, and the fact that you're weaving it together through this way of telling story, of story living, is just beautiful. And it looks like Maxie's here. She's like, yeah, I'm in. I want to be part of this story. She is. You are part of this story. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for carrying that. And the story continues tonight. We have Marley Benedicto here with us. Marley, are you here? I'm looking for you. Somebody want to bring her? There you are.
Hello.
Welcome
Hello again.
Hello again. So Marley, I'm going to introduce you once again because it's just lovely to do so. So for anybody who doesn't know Marley, she liberates, educates, and inspires through healing sounds and visuals. She's an advocate for the voice of the earth. Who else is doing that? Lots of voices here. And a multi-dimensional artist and dream weaver. She beckons forward your timeless soul song and summons the beauty way so that we can all harmonize and play in co-creation. Welcome back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. What a beautiful way to start the day. Just back to back here with the regenerizing. Yeah, so I'm going to sing with you guys. I'm going to sing with you and bring you into the voice of the earth. And one of the reasons that this is important is like Pamela was talking about, like all these, like David's talking about in the chat, is the earth does have a voice. And it's up to us to learn how to slow down and how to relax our nervous systems and consider all of sentient life to be able to listen. And this is really important because we are going into a phase of new world development. And as this new world, Civilization 2.0, is developing, a lot of communities are going to be developed as well. And as we consider how is it that we can develop communities, we can take a practice that I learned while living in Hawaii, which is actually listening to the land. And Hawaii, especially on the Big Island, you're living on an active volcano. And that means that the earth is really loud. Like there's no way to not hear the earth. And so whenever we're here on the mainland in the United States and Western culture, it's really easy for us to think that us humans are in charge and that we're the one writing the game. But whenever you live somewhere like Hawaii, where you're living on an active volcano, there's absolutely no doubt that the land is the one with the plan, that the land will not allow you to project onto it what it is that you want, what buildings you want built, what communities you want to live there. It is a frequency holder that will naturally attract the correct stewards. Now, we have come into a place where we have truly enslaved the land through money. We call this real estate. It's totally normal. We have borders. We have people can live here, but not here. It's a really fascinating concept when you start to take it apart. And so one of the things I love to do is to sing as a steward of the voice of the earth, because it lets you also connect to her beauty, her wisdom, her benevolence, her depth, and even the pain that the earth has as a sentient being, just like you and me. And so, see, I'm going to bring out my handy dandy frame drum. And this is casual style here, okay? So let's see. There's a couple of things that I want to take you into what it is to sing with the voice of the earth, which is first just really grounding into your body. Ways to ground into your body is to feel the soles of your feet on the ground, to become present to the temperature of the room against your skin, to deepen into your breath, bringing that prana, that life force energy into your lungs, into your body. And use your imagination to start to travel deep into the earth, deep into the soil, into the water, into the plants. And this is how we can begin to connect and synergize with other sentient life besides our own egoic identification of the human, right? Typically, whenever I'm singing, I will pull in water a lot. So we're going to see what's coming through. I'm feeling really deep right now after a fiery talk about population control and climate warming after the last panel with an outside guest. And so this might be fiery. Let's see. So I invite you just to close your eyes, to feel your body. And if you're at home and you feel inspired, please, please, please sing along. We'll keep ourselves muted so we don't get crazy echo, but sing. Feel this in your heart. Hmm. And so there's a prayer that I have, and the prayer is, may every song that I sing be a prayer. Mm. And so that one right there, if you feel it in your heart, you feel it in your body, I can share my experience. And my experience of feeling is of death, of water, of the patience and the presence of water. Water wraps around our planet, and water holds history. Water holds the story of time. And since time is non-linear, our oceans hold all of existence that will ever be here on this planet. And so there's a strength in that. There's a strength in the knowing, as, you know, there's predictions that there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish in just 50 years. The beautiful thing about that is knowing that there are so many organizations and people working to counterbalance that and to make sure that that actually never happens. So when you think about the wisdom of the waters, the wisdom of the ocean, that deep patience, the holding, we're asked to do the same as humans, to have our eyes wide open and to really be clearly connected to the suffering of humanity, and to not lose hope and to not lose sight of where we are truly going. And it's that hope that creates the bridge into tomorrow. Because as we remember ourselves as just imaginal beings, literally manifesting and materializing this reality with our thoughts and feelings and words, we come more and more into our natural empowerment to be able to contribute in a solution-oriented way. But we must know the opportunities to be able to breathe in the solutions. So I invite you to share in the chat what it is that lights your heart up most, the biggest opportunities that you see on the planet right now. We could also call these opportunities problems, but we're going to keep our words as pronoia as possible. So if you feel inspired, share what you see as the largest opportunities on the planet right now. And as someone who can identify those opportunities, whether that is the empowerment of women, women's education, women being able to own money, property, and an identity card, a card of their identification. This plays so much into our overpopulation of the planet. When we think about, well, if people just start having less babies, we have to think about people can't have less babies if they don't know. And are they having babies by choice? When we think about the repercussions of an overpopulated planet, we think about climate warming, and we think about our capacity to keep going at the rate of which we could. So rather than tell people what to do, we can inspire them. Education is a way to inspire people to change their ways and to provide equal opportunity and empowerment. And one of the best ways that can be translated across many languages to educate a person is through art and through symbolism, which is why this cohort is so important, because we're using art to communicate visions. So I'm going to go ahead, do a second one here. Let's see what wants to come through. See if maybe Bali wants to play.
Kita yunna yayo isho nambaya kanarayo amayanda yonna na yanda yokuri na itu muna na ayo kurta mai eyak na hayato yani hunai hujida puya puritai hujibutuya ai godai yanai 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 yakuto hinai hinai giri.
And then what I'll end it with is there's a song that I wrote called Moonchild, and has words in it. And I'll just share a couple of the lyrics with you. You don't need to go into the full song. Let's see. Goes. I'm magnetized. I don't coerce. I drain. I do not force. Hypnotized with all this light. Draw you through the long dark night. Gross. I love this one. They call them black, they call them white. Skin tone don't matter, wrong or right. Find your truth and ancestry. Find your voice in mystery. The trees they talk and rivers too, telling us women what to do. Grow your roots and trust your wings. Won't trip over simple things. Oh, moonshine. Whoa, moonchild. Whoa, moonchild. Oh. And that's how I'll close it today. Message from Bali, a message from the waters, one of my own personal songs called Moonchild. And thank you so much. This has been a beautiful experience to share with you and to meet so many people that are also listening to the voice of the earth. And not just listening, but using their facilities and their capabilities to take a stand. And it's no surprise that the way that this is being done is through the beauty way, because that is the magic and the language of the earth. Just thank you, everybody. That's all for me.
You're amazing,
beautiful.
Marley.
Yeah. Alicia, how did that tap into your heart?
Well, I mean, as a singer, I also then am very inspired, yeah, definitely feel great inspiration, witnessing you with your drum in the, tropical background of, you're in Hawaii, right? Yeah.
I'm in Bali.
Oh, you're in Bali. Oh, okay.
I was in Hawaii for most of quarantine.
That makes sense. Yeah, incredible, beautiful to witness. I could listen to you all evening.
Thank you, love.
Thank you. We have another very special guest on their way as well. Our friend Kai Cesar. Kais, are you here with us? Kais is a contemporary Afghan composer, instrumentalist, and
He's
producer.
in the sound check right now.
Oh, really? Oh, I just was told that he had already sound checked. Well, he's on his way. And you guys wait until you hear this music. I had the pleasure of hearing Kais perform in Mesa when Amanda Sage had the opening at the Mesa Arts Center last September. And Kais was playing in the veranda outside of the exhibition, and it was magical. Would you mind if I continued reading his introduction, or should we wait till he arrives?
I wonder if Amanda Sage, if you might want to hang out with Marley while Alicia checks in on the sound check, because you're probably the best sound checker, Alicia, out of
Pull
all
me
of us.
up. I always want to hang out with Marley. And also I'm excited for also Kais coming up. Marley, have you ever do you know the instrument of the Rebob?
No, please share. What is it?
Well, I don't know that much about it, and I wish we could get a full education from Kais on it, but it's a traditional instrument used in Afghan music, traditional music. And he has an incredible collection of rebobs and also repairs them himself as well. And he's going to be playing a raga for us, right? And these ragas, like Indian ragas, they were originally created for, the palace, for the royal people, and they take you on this journey. They're, a different day or night. There's ragas for different situations, but they're a song. It's a song that goes for.
That's actually how I was trained. I never thought I would ever be a singer. And then my voice woke up in a ceremony one time and I had to understand it. So I got a message to go to India. Wow. And I thought I'd be studying Tantra, but instead I was guided to go to work with different music masters and learn the ragas. So I love the correlation.
A full circle. When I saw that you were going to be singing or, expressing in music before Kais, I was also really happy about that. And Kais and my very dear sister Shabnam, who is the one who makes all the clothing. I've worked with her for over 7 years now. And she designs and remixes my paintings to be printed on clothing, on fabric that we then turn into various wearable art pieces. And she knew of his work. Her family, her father's family, actually comes from a lineage of really famous Afghan musicians.
Wow.
And so she also knew of Kais Asar through just the field, and had followed him on social media and knew of his music. And then when she was in Arizona, it was for my opening at the Mesa Contemporary Arts Museum in September. She went up to him and she says, "I'm familiar with your music." And then invited him over to like a little after party we had at our Airbnb. And the two of them got talking and they fell in love. I'm so happy.
What a beautiful story. Wow.
And I get to share the love story. And so they are in this like beautiful weave, both with Afghan roots, living I think Kais was born in Phoenix in Arizona, but his parents, he's first generation. And Shabnam came to the States when she was 4 years old. And, but both as artists, very eclectic, beautiful humans, weaving their lives and art. And I'm happy to finally, invite Kais, into this realm of the train and to, it's all about the design science. studio and these weavings of this confluence and these connections, is so much about the connecting the dots, connecting each other just a little bit more and a little bit more, and weaving these tracks.
Well, I love how you share their love story, so we can all fall in love with them a little bit through that story. It's sweet, and yeah, it's really special when we get a group of people like the Design Science Studio together, because it's really the niche of the niche of the niche, and the similarities that you can have there. Like, I can only imagine whenever they realize how much they had in common with the traditional music. That's deep.
I know, and they're here now. Hi, Shabs. Yay! So glad you're on the train. I just had to share your love story a little bit. You may have heard me.
Hi, Randa.
Hi.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to share?
Nope, you shared it.
I didn't know you were here.
No, it's fine. No, I'm just hello, and I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for the intro.
Shabnam's an amazing designer, and we do all kinds of awesome stuff together, and she's a magical human. I hope you all get to know her or get a piece of her amazing work someday. She also makes awesome earrings. Yeah, we just did a whole show. And we made, speaking of recycling, and I see Melissa's here, and we did, Shabnam, we save all our scraps of all the offcuts, and Shabnam made all these amazing pieces out of all the offcuts. And so we're always aiming to that too, upcycling. Yay, Kais is in the house. Kais is on the train. Kais is in the spaceship of Regenera.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay? Everything simpatico? Cool. I'm going to give an offering of an evening raga, Rag Kirwani. So for those that are familiar with Indian classical music, there are certain times of the day when certain rags are performed and intended for, and this evening I'll be performing Rag Kirwani. So a little short alap, which is an introduction to the raga and kind of show the colors. And I'll start with a segment that is non-rhythmic, and it'll be followed by a portion where a pulse is introduced, where therein it's just going to build in tempo to a climactic ending. So yeah, I'm about to beam everyone deep. So
Kais, I wonder, before you jump in, could I share a little bit about you with everyone that's watching?
Oh,
we
cool.
didn't get to finish that because I jumped in to do your sound check, but I would really love to share. This is a really amazing list of accomplishments that I would love to share. That you are a contemporary Afghan composer, instrumentalist, and producer who channels your melodic designs through the Rebob, a 2,500-year-old instrument from Afghanistan. Kais has toured extensively, sharing his new genre of music nationally and internationally. His first LP, The Green Language, in 2014, quickly became an Amazon #1 bestseller, followed by Tavern of Ruin in 2016, and his third album, The Ghost You Love Most, in 2018, to critical acclaim. He has contributed original music to feature film and television also, composing for 2021's Oscar-nominated film, 3 Songs for Benazir. In 2017, Kais was recruited by director Nora Twomey to compose an original song for her Golden Globe and Oscar-nominated film, The Breadwinner, produced by Angelina Jolie. He earned a Canadian Screen Award for Best Original Song for his piece The Crown Sleeps, Additionally, he orchestrated a sold-out run of the musical Terra Root from the Earth at the OBIE award-winning Ice Factory at the New Ohio Theater in New York City. Congratulations, Kais, and welcome to the Vision Train and Regenera Rising.
It's cool you said that because I definitely wasn't going to say all that.
That's what I'm here for.
Cool. All right. Well, Rag Kirwani.
Thais, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is the little original sound button on the top turned on? You see top right, it says original sound.
Yes.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, just double check.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Amanda, for giving me the time. Come on, hang on the train with you guys.
Woohoo! Choo choo!
Choo-choo.
You're amazing, Kais.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks to all of you. I'm sure I'll see you guys around here. So, yeah, everybody, have a good time. Bye.
Thank you for
Yay.
that amazing music.
Thank you.
very
Thank you. Thank you.
much.
That was the first of maybe, hopefully, many more
Sure. I'll
weavings.
be back on the train.
The Design Science Studio loves you, and Regenerative Rising appreciates you. Thank you for being a part of this important summit.
Cool. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And the space to share my music and the music of where I'm from. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All your
Well, I
links
feel
are in
like
the
we're all
chat.
still reeling from that.
Yeah.
Wow. I just had the pleasure towards the end of Kais's set to sound check with Rosso, and you guys are in for a real treat. I want to just introduce you real briefly, Rosso, and then we'll let you take off. Rosso is a sonic architect and music producer who resides in Northern California, a place that is quite beloved to me, that I lived for a very long time. Came to a prominence in the Burning Man community. His roots and inspiration are found in a disparate smattering of influences that range from improv heavy jam band explorations to minimalist dubstep. Rosso's cinematic music is at once meditative and triumphant. His bold and beautiful journeys sound a home on the largest stages. Connoisseurs of bass music and psychedelic cosmonauts are comfortably at home within his enchanting creations. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Vision Train with Regenerative Rising and Design Science Studio, Rosso. So glad to have you.
It's good to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm going to be playing just kind of like a slow wind-up kind of set, so people can kind of settle into the type of kind of an ecstatic, dancey type of introduction type of thing. And then I'm playing a lot of original music that I created during the downtime, the pandemic time. And then just all the things that I love. Thank you for having me. It's good to share this with everyone.
And thank you for coming again. And you were here for the first Regenerative Rising. I'm like totally on the couch and sitting with my cat now. Didn't think I'd come back on camera, but I just wanted to thank you. Thank you for being such an ally and creative support for this community. There's a lot of creative work shared on these days, and to have the gift of your music as one of the artists is really, truly a blessing. So thank you, Russell.
You're welcome. What's the curfew like? Is it right at 2 hours, or can I play with that a little bit, or is it, how are y'all feeling?
I mean, I'm down if you want to keep going. How's the train
No one-
feel?
Yeah, no one waiting to play after me, so that's cool.
Oh, the train says, bring it on.
Bring it on.
This is the nonstop Vision Train Global Art Jam. So you couldn't play too long for us.
Right.
And Becca's been known to play like 4 to 5 hour sets sometimes.
Becca's on a whole nother level.
I know, she's crazy.
Yeah, I love her.
I love her.
Cool.
Thank you, Becca.
Yeah, no doubt.
Ross, so we have a live stream up. You said you're playing original music, but I imagine there's some other music woven in. So we should
Yeah,
probably
it's like about half
close
and
the
half.
stream. Okay, well, anyone out there, it's been amazing. We're gonna do it all over tomorrow. And if you want to come enjoy, bless you. Bless you. He's just, letting out any of the dust so that you can make space for the dancing. Any of you who are out there on the stream, see you tomorrow or come in because we have many hours of Russo's music ahead. Yay.
Choo choo.
So should I get started?